Hey guys, and welcome to our second episode on Together We Sparkle. I am Andrea,
And I am Michael.
and we are going to have some fun today because I kind of told Mike what we were talking about, but he doesn't really know where we're going. So we'll just start the conversation and
Sounds
see
like a
where it
typical
goes.
day.
Pretty much. So one of the things that everyone's been asking for us to talk about is relationships. And I think one of the biggest causes of conflict within relationships that sometimes even lead to divorce is really on the communication front, which everyone knows. But it's communication is this term that we all throw around and we all kind of learn it and know that it's a problem, but nobody really learns how to properly do it.
Right. That's true.
And not to say that we have it all figured out, but I think that
Definitely not.
in the context of relationship, so I think that we've done a pretty good job at figuring out how to have difficult conversations,
Yes.
even when we differ in opinion.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I was kind of thinking, okay, as I was thinking about what we were going to cover today, I at first thought, well, maybe we can share our story and how we met. And I was like, no, I don't know if anybody wants to hear that right now. I really want to help people and give them some good content. So, for those people who follow me and follow my podcast and my website and all that stuff, it's pretty common knowledge that I was in an abusive relationship. So when you leave an abusive relationship, you have all these things that are kind of screwed up in terms of your perceptions, your ideas, your trust is messed up. There are aspects of fear that come into play. And when you're relating with other people, there are times that you may be triggered based on past experiences.
Yes.
So, one of the things that I learned early on in our relationship was being vulnerable with you when something was bothering me.
Hmm.
And I didn't learn this virtuously or through like some divine revelation. I learned to do it because you would not leave me alone until I told you what was bothering me.
Hmm.
Um, and you remember that, right?
Yes.
There's
Yes.
many occasions.
To be fair though, a lot of that leaving you not alone until I figured out what was bothering you was also coming from a place of insecurity, from an inability to be able to communicate in a previous relationship as well.
Okay, fair, 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 fair. So, when so there were times where things would happen and it would kind of trigger me and
Hmm.
lead to conversation that was difficult. So that's kind of what I want to talk about, how to have difficult conversations. Because when you're in a relationship, like a marriage relationship or a couple, like you're thinking of getting married, you're in a serious relationship, I think it's very important that the two people are vulnerable with each other.
Yes.
You need to talk about everything.
Yep.
You can't go and talk to your best friend about something and not talk to your intimate partner about it.
Right.
I think if you were to have asked me, several years ago before you, I probably would have said that's okay. There's like a place for your spouse and a place for your friend. But I realized how unhealthy that was in
Right.
reality. There was like obviously a lack of trust. So you not being able to share something with your spouse or with your partner is actually a sign of lack of trust.
It is.
May be hard to hear, and there may be reasons for the lack of trust. I'm not saying there's no reason, but it's an indication of lack of trust. So
It could also be an indication of you being afraid of the response that you're going to get,
yes,
and also the fact that you may be still performing and not being authentic in the way you view and see things.
correct.
Because when you're early on in a relationship, you're about to get married, there's a lot of performance going on. Came out of the dating world, right?
Yep.
You're trying to put on a show, you're trying to cast yourself in the best light. So there's a lot of performing going on, and sometimes you're afraid to point out that you really don't like something or you're
Right.
concerned about something because you ultimately want this relationship.
You want the person to like you,
And you
so you don't
want
want
the
to mess
person to
that
like
up.
you,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's not to say there's anything wrong with that. There's a place for that, right? Like when you start dating someone, it's absolutely natural and normal for you to put your best foot forward. You want the person to like you, so you're not going to present all your flaws right up front, right? Like, hey, look at my crazy.
No, you definitely don't want to do that.
Smile a lot, be pleasant to your
Well, I always relied heavily on the first impression being the most important.
Uh-huh.
So I had a good first impression on you, so I didn't worry after that.
That's scary. So, because I was not going through a very good time, I remember that weekend so clearly.
Did I
But
not have a good first impression though?
yes,
Yeah,
well,
there you
I
go.
yeah. So,
That's 90%.
I was thinking about a situation that I felt comfortable enough where I was triggered
Oh boy.
and how we kind of dealt with that, because I
Hashtag triggered.
want to give some hope to people in terms and an example of how to deal with something like that. So you're dealing with not necessarily an argument, but something that you're triggered about and how to have that conversation with the other person.
Okay.
So, and you're going to remember this.
Oh,
It
boy.
was in the very beginning. We were on Blakeshire place, and Mike was driving into the office every day. So he would drive about an hour to work every day. And he came home, and I'm at home because I work from home. And I don't know if I was cooking dinner. I don't know what was happening. But Mike was on the phone and stayed in the driveway for a little bit talking on the phone. And I'm in the house realizing that he's talking on the phone in the car. And I don't want to, but I start getting bothered because I'm like, why is he in the car? What is he hiding? Why can't he come and have that conversation in the house? And like all this stuff is like going through my head. And mind you, he's on the phone blissfully having a conversation with his best friend, like totally in, his zone, unaware that I'm in the house and all these thoughts are brewing, right? All these things are brewing. And I now I know why that was. But it, those were the feelings I was having. And I think that may be normal for some people, but it was like I was just super upset. So you come in the house, and I don't know how it happened. Do you remember what happened? How it came up then that I was bothered by it?
Well, no, but I remember you being really upset and me being very confused.
That
Like,
happens a lot.
I was so confused. I was like, wait, what now?
It happens less now, but I feel like it still happens. I don't think it was like right when you came in. It may have been one of the times where you're like, something is wrong with you.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
upset about something.
Yeah.
I do not have a poker face at all, obviously, by all my facial expressions on if you watch the podcast video. But at some point we started talking about it, and it was, the reason it bothered me so much is because in my former relationship, actually in two former relationships, the person I was with, so it wasn't just one, it was multiple.
Wait, two former relationships?
Two former relationships, I was cheated on,
Real woman at the
and
well
it
thing.
always was. Yeah. It may have only been about 5. I did not have many relationships.
Wow. That's messed
I
up.
can identify with the Samaritan
I'm
woman.
sorry for that joke.
So I've had past relationships where the person was having inappropriate relationships and
Mm.
phone conversations and using their phone, doing all this stuff without my knowledge. So they would sit in the car and do this. And I was oblivious because sometimes I sit in the car and have conversations with people and I just don't want to transition in,
Yeah.
or there's people in the house or whatever. But in my mind, I was kind of like, oh, is this just a repeat of what happened in my life before?
Hmm.
And so we had the conversation, and one of the reasons these conversations were always difficult was because I did trust Mike and I loved Mike and I knew that it wasn't him doing it. So it was like, how is he going to react? Because I'm accusing him kind of, but not really. And then there were times that you would get offended.
Well, I was really confused because I was actually talking to a guy,
Right.
and I'm not gay, so I was
Right.
wondering like like what could we possibly? And the
Right, but then,
conversation
like-
started when I left the office,
Right.
and it carried all the way home because that's how I catch up on with my friends. When I'm driving,
Right.
I'll make random phone calls that I won't normally
Correct.
make to people I don't normally talk to. If I remember correctly, it was somebody from my past actually, and we were having a conversation about. I think it was I think we were talking about ministry actually, and we were talking about
Yeah,
different ministers
It
in
could have
ministry.
possibly been your parents too, actually.
That particular conversation, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, because I'm remembering it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was actually someone that we were talking about ministry. We were talking about different graces and kind of how ministry works. I was explaining some things that I was thinking about and studying. So to me, I was having an incredible God moment, and then I
Right.
come inside and Andrew's
I'm
furious
like,
at me.
what's wrong with you? Why are you on the phone outside?
Yeah, and we were talking about all kinds of stuff. I thought I was being respectful. Like in my head, like I was being respectful because I'd driven home. We were gonna wrap this conversation up. He was kind of long-winded, and then I'd come inside and I could really focus on you. To me, what was disrespectful is walking into the house, chatting with someone else, because we were newlyweds at that time. We were getting to know each other, and like we like when I was with you, I tried to be with you.
You were present.
I was present, and to me, like I didn't want to be disrespectful walking into the house, carrying on a 20-30 minute conversation with somebody, and then saying hi to you. You know what I mean? Like, oh hey, oh you are here. You
Yeah.
know. And working away from home at that time, us coming back together, I knew I was going to want to talk to you. I was going to see what's going on in your life, talk to the kids. That was my thought process. So to me, I was just really doing the right thing. But yeah, not so much.
So you were very confused. And as you guys can tell, probably by listening to Mike, if you're a female and, maybe you've had this type of argument or whatnot, what Mike is saying is something where you may not realize that's why someone is doing something, and you're thinking all these things. Like in my case, I was thinking all these things that were really associated with trauma. They were just triggers. And I was assuming Mike's motives, Mike's heart, Mike's intent. But to him, none of that was happening. It was like truly Venus and Mars, right? Complete opposite. So when the conversation came up and I explained to Mike some of the things that I went through in my past that caused me to have issues, at first he was a little upset because he's like, man, I'm not doing anything wrong. Which I knew, and I said, like, I know you weren't doing anything wrong, but for some reason it bothers me. And he explained what he just explained to me then. It made sense. I was like, wow, that's so thoughtful. But then you kind of feel bad. Like I felt bad because I'm like, wow, I'm such a jerk. I'm over here upset. And he's just trying to be nice and kind. But what Mike did at the end of the conversation and kind of how he resolved it really set the tone for our relationship and cemented some trust. And then obviously it cements more and more all the time. But
What did
do
I
you
do?
remember? Do you remember?
What I did?
Yeah,
Well,
like how did you resolve it?
I remember thinking about it after I got done being defensive.
Uh-huh.
Because when somebody, accuses, because of what I've went through in the past and false accusations and stuff, when someone accuses me of something I don't do, I tend to be very aloof and I don't defend myself in any way.
Just
And I'm just like, you're an
walk away.
idiot and I got no time for you. And I just ignore them. And then the person accusing me usually, even if they're wrong, are confused on whether they were right or wrong on the accusation because I'm not going to waste my time defending myself.
Right.
Like the dumber the accusation, the less likely I am to defend myself. And that's been my history. So when Andrea brought that up, I wanted to just close up, shut down, go in my corners. Hey, another crazy baddie woman, don't want to deal with her. You know what I mean? Like that's what I wanted to do. And
Kind of like, here we go again.
but then I also didn't exactly, totally. It's like, oh my God, it's happening again. So
it's all of them, all of them.
yeah, for every single one of them, actually. I too got 5. No, but but no, I don't. But anyways, sorry, joke on a joke. I shouldn't do that on a podcast. But
It's fine.
it's so when I began to think about it and process it, I began to flash back to how did I handle those situations in the past? And I handled them terribly, got aloof, shut down, or the opposite, blow
Got
up,
mad, yeah.
blow up, yell, scream, call them names.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And both of those ways were common ways I handled problems, right? And both
Did not work.
ways didn't work. Ended in divorce, ended in trouble. It didn't work. So I'm not dumb. So first sign of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So as I began to think about it, I was like, I don't want her. I do love her. I do respect her, and I want our relationship to work. So if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, because you didn't prep me for this. You never do.
That's why.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what I did, and I still do it to this day. I try to finish all conversations before I get home, and I don't sit in the car and have conversations with people. And if I do have to carry a conversation in, I bring it in, and I don't do that anymore.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I made a decision not to do that anymore. From now on, even though I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm still going to make sure you're a part of it.
Yes. So what you said to me was, I didn't realize that would trigger something for you. And I don't want to do that. So from now on, I'll just come in the house even if I'm having a conversation, or I'll end the conversation.
Yeah, that's basically what.
And that was huge for me, because it was like, wow, he actually cares enough to do that, and he's concerned about me and my healing. Now, to be honest, you have done it, but it was kind of like our relationship, as time went on, our relationship, and as healing happened in my life, that didn't bother me anymore, because now there was this trust level. So I don't know when it was, because now I don't care, but I know there have been times where you were in the car, you'd be on the phone. That's why I think I thought I was on the phone with your parents, because one time you were on the phone with your parents and you stayed in the car. But then I do it too.
Yeah,
especially when you're on the Bluetooth in your car, like you don't want to transition out.
Yeah, well, Bluetooth on my car, you can actually stand, just so you know, 10 feet outside my car and hear everything, like 50 feet away from my car.
That's like any car.
Yeah, so yeah, no secrets there. But it's weird. Like I remember I remember prior to us
Mhm.
being married, having a relationship, just like a friendship, almost like a girlfriend type
Mhm.
relationship with someone. And I remember she was she was Muslim, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I don't think I ever told you this story. She was Muslim, and my mom called me about something going on with their church that they were a part of. And so we're having this whole Christian conversation about all this stuff going on. And I remember I was sitting out in my car talking to her, and this Muslim lady was sitting on the front porch who I was dating, and she was listening to this whole thing. And I remember it really like she like I was standing there. No, I wasn't in my car. I was on the cell phone. I was outside of the car, but I wasn't in the house. I didn't know she was sitting outside the house.
Oh, okay.
And so she could hear everything that we had talked about, all
Mhm.
this Christian. You can imagine to a Muslim
Right,
hearing
right,
all
yeah.
this Christian stuff. And we were talking about, you know how my parents
Yeah.
get. Like we
Uh-huh.
were talking about all kinds of stuff. And boom, like it was the end of our relationship. Like she was so freaked out by what she heard. We were done.
You're like, nobody
We were
wants to hear
done.
my
Like
conversations
that.
anymore.
And so I remember after that going, I mean, yeah, that relationship was not gonna last anyways.
Right.
Unless I could convert her. But no, just kidding.
Yes,
It
conversion
wasn't
is
gonna
the
work
goal.
anyways, but and it was more of a friendship thing, but I remember having that trauma and being like, it's difficult, you know, because I talk to people. I have one friend, you know, that does not claim to be a Christian at all. You know, and he talks about crazy stuff. I have to mute him in front of people because, you know, you never know what's going to come out of his
Yes,
mouth.
that's very true. Very,
Um,
very true.
you know, and you never know what your parents are going to call you about. And also like we're pretty mature now, but you don't want somebody bringing up something or saying something in a new relationship.
Yeah,
So
that's
there was
true.
a lot of insecurities in my head
Mhm.
probably too of why I didn't want to bring a conversation. But that particular conversation was a nothing
Yeah, it was
conversation.
just I brought it up because it was, to me, it was a monumental, because what you did was show me love that day. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I actually was doing it out of respect for you. But because there's this trigger and it upset you, I'm going to change my behavior, even though it wasn't wrong, because I love you.
Yeah, it wasn't really what I don't know why I did that day. Honestly, I'd like to take credit, but um, I really valued our relationship. And one thing that has been really important to me after coming through bad relationships
Mhm.
is when you do face that conflict. How you face that conflict is key
Right.
to your future with that person. Because one, name calling, yelling, screaming, attacking,
Right.
belittling, ignoring, disregarding,
Silent treatments.
silent treatment, those are all things that I have felt and have done to others.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that to you. And so, like, literally doing what I did was the only thing I could think of.
Right.
Because in my mind, it was crazy what you were.
Right.
I didn't have a concept of your triggers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and you weren't even telling me that you were triggered. You were telling me you're upset, but you weren't really telling me why you were upset.
Right, because I didn't know, just like you don't know really why you went that route. It's the same thing for me when it happened, right? Everything's so new. I didn't know. Like today, I think I would be a lot quicker at identifying a trigger.
Yeah.
Because of the journey I've been on and how much learning I've been doing. But at that time, I really didn't know.
Well, now that I think back on it, I remember how upset you were. And I kept asking you, look, I know you're upset with me. This was after dinner.
Yeah.
After the everything. And I think we were actually in bed. And I'm like, no, like you're upset.
You
I
could
could tell.
always feel when I was upset, even if I tried my hardest to pretend, it was very annoying. And he would like push me to talk about it because he had his traumas and triggers from the silent treatment and
Yes. So
passive aggressiveness.
my when you combine insecurity with prophetic ability, you can count on a nuclear explosion of stupidity. And so like I was insecure about what was going on,
Mhm.
and also prophetically entwined or intellectual enough to know something's off.
Right.
Like I was sensing it both in the spirit and in the natural.
Mhm.
You were masking it really well, actually. It was impressive because we had a great dinner,
Uh-huh.
smile, hugged me, kiss.
Because I
Like
didn't
you were
want to be
putting
upset.
on a show.
But it's
And
because
it was beautiful.
I didn't want to
Um,
be upset.
Yes, you didn't. Well, you
Because
told me
I
that.
knew it was
I kept
wrong.
asking you what was wrong, and you kept saying, "I don't. It's nothing. You're gonna be up. You're not gonna understand it. I just need to sleep on it. Don't let's
And
just
that was
forget
always
about
my
it."
thing. I just need to
Yep.
think, process.
And then I'll get back to you.
Want to talk to me about it right now.
Yeah, but my insecurity wouldn't allow that to happen. So I'm just pushing. Luckily, she broke before I did. But no, I'm just kidding.
But then you got
But
upset about it.
yeah, I did briefly.
But then eventually
But I
we
didn't-
talked through it.
I didn't yell or scream or call
No,
names
no,
like I
no,
had
it
in the
was-
past. But not with you. I never did that to you.
Yeah, no, that was definitely not an argument that we had. But it definitely paved a way and opened the door. And then after that, there were still times where I would get triggered by something and it's still reluctant to tell you, but it was always because I was embarrassed to admit that I was upset about certain things because they would be like, I don't know if anyone has triggers or like trauma from your past or abuse, like you feel stupid, like this shouldn't bother me,
Yeah.
but it's bothering me. I don't want it to bother me, but it bothers me. And then we don't tell anyone and it kind of festers and lingers and the other person has no idea why you're upset or what to do. And we think that they should just read our mind and instinctively know what they should and should not do.
Yes.
And after that, there were a few, not a lot, but there were a few occasions where something similar, like I would be triggered, you would be like, wow, I had no idea. Like something so simple where it's normal. It's so normal for somebody to do. And it's kind of like, I didn't want to ask you to not do it, but at the same time, it would trigger. And every time that happened, you would be willing to just not do whatever the thing was. And it's not that it lasted forever, because the reality is, as I healed, it wouldn't bother me anymore. So, and then eventually it became normal and it wasn't a problem anymore. And you could just be normal
Yes.
and do that thing.
Yeah, it was temporary.
I can't think of any other major. I know we had it because I remember one time I was in the bathtub and I was really upset and I was like texting you like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can.
Do you remember what that one was?
Sure. Yeah, I remember a few of them, but I don't feel like we should talk about them, to be honest with you. Because I don't want other people that were involved
Oh, yes. Okay.
to hear it
Yeah.
and then be
Okay.
upset because
Yeah.
we were talking about them. It's almost impossible to tell the story without involving
Gotcha.
individuals.
So, yeah. So,
I'm okay with making fun of you or I, but I don't want to like
yeah. No, that's
tear
fine.
other people down.
So yeah, so that's the thing that I wanted to talk about today is when you come out of relationships, because most people, they've come out of some sort of relationship. And if it's not a romantic one, it's, with your family or your parents or your siblings, you have some sort of negative experience with relationships. And then you bring it into your romantic relationships or any other type of relationship, and you don't address the issue. You're not vulnerable. You're not honest with the person. And a lot of times it's out of fear of rejection, of them not liking you, of them thinking you're crazy. Sometimes you think you're crazy, right?
Yeah.
But to have a healthy relationship of any kind, romantic friendship, there has to be that vulnerability and honesty where you can be very open about your feelings without retaliation
Yeah.
or offense. And again, it goes back to what we mentioned last week about, and I'm sure we'll have an episode just on this, but about the focus needs to be understanding, not agreement.
Yes.
So clearly you didn't agree with me that you had done something wrong, and
No.
I knew that you didn't do anything wrong.
And I didn't understand it either.
But you understood, right? I didn't understand either. But you understood where I was coming from, and when
I
you
trusted you enough, and I valued our relationship with enough that I didn't need to have a full understanding in the moment.
right,
And I think that's, I think taking the time to get to understand a situation, right?
Mhm.
Because I think we did do that very shortly after that, because I kept quizzing you
right,
and you began to tell me why it was an issue that I was sitting in the car,
hmm
right? And, I'm like, take my phone, here's my passwords,
right,
like I
like,
was trying all the things that would normally work, right?
mhm.
And none of that was really working. And I was like, well, I just, I think one of the things we've had other situations come up, and a lot of times it's been other people getting involved and trying to get between our relationship.
Yeah,
And just when you and I would run into that, one of the first things, like the very first things that I admired about you, is what always mattered to you was 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 your relationship with me always took precedence.
hmm
And once I began to see that, like it was something I was not used to, because in previous relationships, my relationship with my spouse was secondary to the relationship with her father, her mother, her
hmm
friends, her family, the church that we went to,
right,
you know what I mean,
yeah,
her children. Everything took relational precedence over
hmm
relationship with me. And I was like, I remember thinking back on that, and I probably had the same problem, or a similar problem, not quite as bad, but hopefully, but maybe I did, to be honest. So when you choose to be in a relationship at a husband and wife level,
hmm
right? That's high level,
yep,
right? Husband and wife level. I'm not talking girlfriend, boyfriend,
right,
friend,
or
best friend.
yeah,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about husband and wife level relationship, commitment. There's a value that comes with it that has to be established
hmm
in your heart.
right,
And so I don't care if I was the most innocent person on earth, okay, in that moment in the car or any other time we've had a problem. The value portion was needed to be on our relationship
hmm
and how that was going to work out. And a lot of people, I remember previous, being younger, people would be like, oh, you're just whipped. Oh,
hmm
she just controls you. Oh, and sure, you could make that argument. But for me, it was like, no, I want to help this relationship. I value this relationship,
hmm
and I am going to give her the what is due, and I think that's really, really, really important. Too many times I see friends, family, ministry people put their ministry over their relationship with their wife, their friendships over their relationship with their wife, their finances over their relationship with their
sometimes
wife,
even their kids,
and their kids over their relationship with their wife. And they do it quite often, and they do it in such a unbalanced way,
hmm
that it tends to create problems, and you eventually, it fractures the relationship till, well, it can't continue, and that's how divorce comes about. And so I didn't need to fully understand you in that moment.
hmm
I needed to honor our relationship. And that was the most important. We've had crazy things happen since then, where one or the other one probably should have been very, very angry, or acted out, or by standards
yeah,
of other
yeah.
people, right?
How
And
other people do it?
right, and we didn't do that,
hmm
right? You didn't do that, and I didn't do that.
hmm
So I think that's important, to carry that in your life, that honor level, raise it up as high as possible. and live it out.
Yeah, it is an honor, and I think it's an honor of respect and honor situation, and really just listening to the person and understanding like they're clearly hurt and trying to figure out what can I do to help. And even if it's not that formal, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, right, you're not really there. But a lot of conflict really gets out of hand and things get heated and voices raised. Usually it's because egos are getting in the way.
Yep.
So like if you had gotten stuck on the whole fact that you did nothing wrong and you were being unfairly judged,
Right, which is a hill I've stood on my whole
right,
life.
which to be honest, you kind of did, but I would have reacted the same way, because I hate when people accuse me of things I did not do. Like, I hate it. And here I was, and then when you told me why you didn't come into the house, I was like, man, now I really feel dumb. So then
Yeah, that doesn't help either.
so then yeah, and then what happens is now I'm embarrassed, right? There's ego. And so now I have to keep the fight going because I have to take
Yeah, you have to
attention away from the fact that I just made a big old goof.
save face.
Yeah, so you got to like keep on going and persist instead of just being humble enough to say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I completely misjudged what's happening. And I really appreciate you even considering me that way." It's not to say that you then don't go and discuss what bothered you, because we still had that conversation.
Hmm.
This is why it bothered me. This is what I was. And at some point it did, like you had to kind of dig a little bit. At that point, I wasn't able to articulate as well as I can now. But being able to dig and get to the point where I could explain why it bothered me. And
Yeah.
when you realize that it really had nothing to do with you, it was just something so simple that triggered, you were willing to lay it aside. So that's what I wanted to talk about. If you have past relationships and you have things that bother you,
Yeah.
you have to open up. You have to talk about it, as embarrassing as it is,
Yes.
as awkward, because sometimes it's not even embarrassing. It's just an awkward. We're
And
not used to
and if-
talking about things
And
like
if you
this.
find yourself in a relationship with someone that can't handle it,
yeah,
you got a problem.
Like, listen, guys, when you marry someone, it is a serious commitment, okay? Divorce is something I would not wish on my worst enemy. It really is a horrible, horrible thing to go through. And for you to go into a marriage and just think, if it doesn't work out, we'll just get divorced, or, that's just really poor thinking. You have no idea whatsoever, especially when kids are involved.
Yeah.
So when you're dating someone, these are the kinds of things and conversations that you need to have. You need to learn how to have difficult conversations. You need to learn how to assess the relationship properly, be honest with yourself, notice the red flags.
Yes.
Because once you get married, like anything that's been difficult or wrong will magnify.
Yeah.
It won't get better. Marriage doesn't fix anything. Marriage amplifies it. And if you're seeing something, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to learn how to have those awkward conversations. Before you get married, do you want to have kids? How do you see finances? How many kids do you want to have? Do you have school debt? What's your credit score? Right? What are your views on XYZ? There's all these things there's some things that are kind of non-negotiables, and you need to decide what those non-negotiables are for you. We're all going to have different ones. And there's going to be things where you're going to see a fault, because nobody's perfect.
Yeah, but like, we had all those conversations, but how do you deal with the pitfalls? Like, you're gonna sit in your driveway, have a conversation, your marriage will end. You know what I
Because
mean?
that
Like,
one, but that's what I'm saying. That's trauma, right? So
right.
if you already see it, you know, while you're going through it, because we had situations when we were dating
Like
too.
there is no checklist though that you can go over that makes sure you cover everything,
Correct. You
right?
just have to be authentic and vulnerable throughout the entire thing.
Yes.
Listen, when
I
you're
mean, I think there is a checklist that you probably cover, right?
like some of the ones I just
you
mentioned,
just mentioned, yeah, but like some of this stuff you're not going to see coming.
guys, and I'm gonna leave this right here too. If you're a Christian and you go and date a non-Christian and you're gonna get married to that non-Christian, do not complain after you're married that they're not of the same faith. Because I've had so many people that I know that it works, but then after they get married, like the eventually it starts to impact, and there's this great divide. And now you're in this relationship where you're, you know, in Christianese terms, unequally yoked, and you're struggling and you don't know what to do. And now there's a huge like divide, okay, between you and your spouse. Listen, if you're dating someone and you're not of the same faith, I'm sorry to tell you, but you need to really, really think about it, because the odds, it's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard when you are of the same faith, and then when you bring in having different faiths, it's a whole different ball game. You have to be authentic and vulnerable. When you're dating someone, it's very easy, you know, like we said, you're going to put your best foot forward. You don't want the person to see all
Yeah.
your ugly, right? I'm not saying put all your ugly out there. There's only so much of my ugly that someone can take at one point in time. But Mike
I
and
didn't know you had ugly.
Sure. Mike and I were friends before. And so we had like pretty candid conversations. Like I didn't feel the need to pretend to be around you when we were just friends.
No.
Like I was who I was. The things that came out of my mouth came out of my mouth. I did not filter at all.
I didn't either.
So by the time we started dating, there wasn't that much of a need to filter, right? We didn't feel the need to filter that much.
And also I went out of my way to make sure I told you everything I could think of.
Yes, we had like very long conversations.
However, I learned more about you later on. I don't think you did it that same level.
Because I didn't know how messed up I actually was.
No, come on. Like I think I was more forthcoming, you know, because for me it was like a defense thing. Like if this woman's actually gonna like me, like I need to get like all this stuff out,
Right.
so that we can like deal with
So
it
I
all.
don't break, or I don't break
So
your
you-
heart and leave you after.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was like, you know, long-term plan. And then she comes in, you know, sneaking around the bush, you know, I've lived a perfect life. Guess what? Not so
No.
much.
No, when you met me, I was going through the most difficult time of my life.
I know.
Okay, I was up and down.
Well, and
which
I
is-
knew that because we were friends.
Which is why part of you stayed away from me in the beginning, or at least that's what you told me.
Yeah.
Like in terms of romantically.
Oh, yeah.
Because
No, I
you
knew
knew-
that was a no-go
Yeah, I was-
zone. Like,
I was going to be celibate and single for the rest of my life.
hey, me too. I even called you and told you. Remember?
And I left.
Yes.
Because-
She didn't believe me.
He
And you
crazy.
know what? At the moment, I was very offended because I was serious.
No, I was very serious because I totally could have. Like,
Yeah.
That's
one
a
of
whole-
us could have. One of us
a
couldn't
whole
have.
conversation
Sure.
for a
And
whole
you
other
couldn't
day.
have either. It wouldn't have worked.
Listen, I had such a negative view and horrible view of
She told me.
sex that I just
She told me that she hated cuddling. If y'all don't know what that is, it's when you like hug and, you know,
like physical affection.
like physical affection, touching,
I was
cuddling.
not an affectionate person. I kind of am not, though. Maybe not to the degree that I made it sound, but I'm not the
No.
most affectionate.
No, you are. You are.
Am I?
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, and
I
you
wish
know,
I was more, I
I'm
guess.
not. I don't like to cuddle. I don't like touching. I don't like being touched. Blah 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 blah. And for me, it was like red flag, red flag. You know, like get out of this, get out of this, because I'm the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then we start, you know, dating, and she's just over the top affectionate, over the top cuddling. Like I was like, get off of me, woman.
Right, right.
But no, seriously,
He's
much
like, you lied to me.
like you spent this whole gave me this whole speech about how much you hate it, to the point where I was like, I don't think this is gonna work.
I was also trying to friend zone you.
And it just like was the opposite of that. And I'm like, okay, she definitely was hiding a little
A
bit.
lie. Well,
And then you went on to, you had the audacity to go on to tell me that in all of your previous relationships, except for one, that you didn't like
yes.
cuddling.
Yes.
Right?
That is true.
All
except
of-
for one.
except for one. Hey, you said candid conversations. Isn't that what you,
Oh, my
you
Lord.
brought me on here for?
No, but that's what I was gonna say. It was like it just wasn't. It was again that it's a nurture thing. It's your environment,
Yeah.
right? So I didn't feel I didn't. So then I thought, oh, that's me, but it's not me,
No, because once you realized that you liked me, you wanted to cuddle,
right?
which meant you didn't really like everyone else.
Well, it's not only that, it's that when the other person doesn't, or you go to hold somebody's hand and they push it away, or you go to like lock arms and they're kind of like they don't like PDA, you decide for your sake, you then put in your head, oh, I don't like it either, because then it's less disappointing than feeling like you're being rejected.
Oh my God, I should have learned that years ago, man.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally could have
Okay.
done that. But I didn't. I never did that. Like, I just continued to feel rejected for years and
Oh,
years and
I
years.
just psychologically adapt for survival purposes.
Oh boy, I wonder what I'm doing to you.
Well,
no,
we
like
should
I never adapted.
we
I
should
just-
start. We should end the podcast
Yeah, I got more things
because
to
we're
talk about.
yeah. But so in summary, it's very important that you have authentic and vulnerable conversations with the people in your life. You don't have to, like, I'm not talking about acquaintances or people you just meet. I'm talking about people you have intimate relationships with, relationships that you really care about, that mean something to you.
Well, there you
That's where
go.
we are today.
Another episode, Together We Sparkle.
Is there anything that you want to talk about next week that you have on your mind?
No, not yet. Send in what you want us to talk about.
Okay, so we shall see. We shall see. Keep it dynamic. Keep you guessing. Keep me guessing because I have no idea what we'll talk about next week.
We'll come up with something good.
All right, guys. Well, you have a good one, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Let us know your recommendations. Don't forget, if you like this episode, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, share it with your friends, because if you enjoyed it, maybe someone else will enjoy it too.
We may
Thanks,
talk a little
guys.
bit about the future.
I have no idea what that means, but okay. Bye, guys. Have a good one.